Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. So today we're installing a new high clearance exhaust on my Tacoma. This kit is from AWE. I'll have that link down in the description where you can order a few different kits just depending on your taste and what you want included in your kit. So for the kit that I got for my specific Tacoma, I have everything laid out essentially how it will be installed on the truck. This is a true dual exhaust system going all the way back. We have a few mufflers there and then all the piping, of course, going all the way to where the exhaust tips would be connected. So I'm gonna switch over to the GoPro so that way it's a little bit more a wide angle so you can see up underneath the truck. So I have my makeshift dolly so I can slide up underneath here, and I just want to give you guys some tips. I just got these two bolts out and these two bolts out here. Now I have to work on the hangers. And for these bolts, these are actually still the factory ones. So I've reused all four of these for the different exhaust systems that I've had. I've also had some extra leverage to use to get these off. Now you can spray these with some penetrant, let them sit for a little bit, makes it much easier to get off. And so from there, I wanted to make sure that I could get both of those off because essentially the rest of this exhaust here is being held on with these hangers. So I have these large pliers, clamps here that I am going to use from here on out for these rubber hangers. And so these can be a little bit tricky. If you spray these with some penetrant, that can actually help too. And you're just going to start wiggling this until you can actually get it off. I think I got to spray a little bit on that. And from there, I can do that one, I can do this one. There's one just behind the muffler, and I think there's one up on that far right there. And with the hardest part out of the way, sometimes you gotta improvise when you're doing this yourself. And it's just that easy. So now for the installation of the new exhaust, I'm actually not reusing those factory bolts for this side here. So I do have some new hardware, and essentially it's just like taking the exhaust off. Just need a little bit of patience and a little bit of wiggling. So I have that one loosely connected. It is really not all that tight because I want all of this wiggle room in order to line up the rest of the exhaust. Now I will say again, this requires a lot of patience. The fitment is good, but it does take a little bit of time, at least for me, to get that lined up, to get these bolts in. And then when you start tightening it down, make sure you go evenly from left side to right side so that way it can attach to the other pipe very securely. So now with the other pipe, I am just going to line it up just like this. I am reusing the factory hardware for this side. Now it's time to line up the H pipe. So that is this portion right here. And this is another reason why the exhaust needs to be fairly loose up front, because I have two connections on a solid pipe with both of these that are each freely moving. So from here, I need to line both of them up as best I can. And I'm gonna push them as far as I can forwards. And then these are the hangers here that will be lined up, of course, just behind those. And so I'm just gonna snug these down ever so slightly just to keep them from spinning around. And so onto the main muffler section now, I'm going to put these clamps on so that way I have the nut on the bottom side. It's going to make it much easier to connect. And from here, I wanna try to get it through the hanger first, so that way I can have a little bit of leverage in this holding it up for me essentially. So I can just push that through while I line up the front of this too. And I'm definitely going to have to push it a lot farther forwards. I still have a lot of room to go. So it's just a matter of wiggling this on. Okay, and from there, I can slowly start to tighten these up now. So as we're working our way back to the rear axle, we have the two smaller mufflers to put on. When you're installing this, do the passenger side first because you won't have enough clearance to put the driver's side one on first and get this one tightened down. So I have my clamp on already, just like we've been doing all the way down this exhaust. All right, passenger side is done. We can slide on the driver's side. As we make our way to the axle now, there are two pipes here that have a giant curve to them to go up and over the rear axle. One of them is shorter, one of them is longer, and because we have one muffler here that is longer, the shorter pipe is going to connect to this one, and then the longer pipe is going to go to the other side. So again, pretty straightforward. It's not taking that much time. They actually both have hangers on them, so I did forget to attach the hanger on the other side. But if I line this one up now, I should be able to pull this up towards the hanger. With the exhaust still loose, since I haven't tightened it down, it makes it so much easier to line these up, or as easy as you can get it. There we go. So that is one hanger. Now the hanger on the other side might be a little bit trickier, but there we go. So we are getting close to putting the exhaust tips on. We have our final piece. I already have my clamps on here because I'm pushing them up towards these pipes here. So I want to make sure that those are on so I don't forget them. And so again, this is why you want the exhaust to be loose, so that way you can get this fitment along with lining up this last hanger, which might be a little tricky. And so for the tip installation, this is going to be the easiest of the entire exhaust. Now you can get a few different colors. You can also get a few different models like I mentioned earlier as far as having the tips or not having them. I'm probably going to leave them off because I have the high clearance rear bumper, but just to show you what they look like, they definitely have a good fitment to them there. And then if I had the stock exhaust, or sorry, the stock bumper, I believe that bumper would be right above that. So the fitment should be very cool with that. But there is a loose fitment. Like I mentioned, I need to go back through and tighten all of these bolts. But here's a look at what the entire system looks like. All of the welds, everything looks so nice. Going all the way back to the exhaust there, or sorry, the rear axle. So overall, not a hard project. Most exhausts are going to be the same as far as how you're going to install them. And then just a look from the rear back. This can also accommodate larger spare tires. So as you can see the clearance, this is the stock that came on my truck. So if I wanted to go bigger, I definitely have the clearance to do that. I think you can go 32, maybe I stuff a 33 with this exhaust, and it wraps nicely underneath the leaf spring there. And with that first cold startup for this AWE exhaust, it sounds really good. I'm gonna go over what it's like driving this later in today's video, so that way I can talk about what it's like from the inside and get some exterior clips. For the box of parts that I have left, I went ahead and removed the tips so far. And then this also has two extensions for the 6-foot bed. So if you have a Tacoma with a 6-foot bed, you can still buy this kit. It will accommodate that. I'm not using them because I have the 5-foot bed. But I also want to show you guys a really cool part of this exhaust. So these are called brush guards. What these are used for is I am going to now remove the tailpipe section, or this last section here, along with the tips, which I just did, because if you don't want this to happen to your exhaust, but you also want to have this on if you have a lower bumper, or even with my high clearance bumper, you want to leave those on and have those for everyday use. You can not only do that, you can remove it, you can add these guards, which I'll show here in just a little bit, and then you can take this off-road and not worry about damaging your exhaust. So right now I'm going to remove this last section, which really isn't hard to do. There's 2 clamps, there's 1 hanger, then I can remove this entire section. And with a quick switch, now we have our high clearance off-roading exhaust. You can see those are pretty much the new tips now. You can see them right there. So those are those brush guard pieces that also have AWE on the very end of them. So essentially the replacement exhaust tips, I reused the same clamps, and now we just have it dumping right there. So actually, if you have it like this, you have a lot more room, and I can still adjust those just to make them a little bit closer, but you have a lot more room for the spare tire. And so now with this exhaust system all on the truck and ready to go, let's have a nice change of scenery. And now we are about to do a full pedal acceleration with the entire exhaust going all the way back to the tips. And now test 2, this is the high clearance version, pedal to the floor. Slight acceleration on the on-ramp. I currently have the exhaust in what I will say is the high clearance setting. You may be able to see the tailpipe section just behind me there. And as we merge into traffic, I put some miles on both of these exhaust systems, and so I want to go over my final thoughts with this AWE true dual exhaust system for the Tacoma. So this is actually a first of its kind, and of the exhaust systems that I've had on my Tacoma, I've had quite a few. This is the first true dual exhaust system that I've had, and surprisingly, it's not that much louder than the normal dual exhaust system, kind of the single pipe to the dual setup, or the catback system, I should say, that I've had previously. And what I love about this system is the fact that you can get it two different ways depending on what works best for what you're doing with your truck and what works best with how you have your truck set up. So for me, I'm taking off the tailpipe section simply because I have that high clearance bumper, and so that's going to be in the way for the setup that I have. But as you saw earlier, you can have this system with a normal bumper or a stock bumper if you have that on your truck. And I think especially the tips that come with this, they're almost like the tips that my brother had on his Toyota Supra. So AWE is making some fantastic tips for this Tacoma exhaust, which is awesome to see if you want to have the tips. Now, as far as this system goes with how it sounds, I'm cruising at right around 60 miles an hour with the high clearance section right now. Don't know how well the GoPro can pick up the audio of this exhaust, but I will say from the exterior, the exhaust doesn't really sound all that different as you heard. From the interior though, it's going to be a little bit different because now the pipe is in front of that rear axle. Actually, I think it dumps behind the rear axle versus having to go all the way to the end of the bed. So there is a slight difference from the interior of the cab, especially if you're sitting in the back seat. But it's not crazy loud like there's a drone or it's going to be annoying driving it every day. I am leaving the exhaust in this high clearance setup, and I think it's fine. We do have some traffic coming up here, so I won't be able to go as fast as I was. 60 miles an hour was it for today, but that's about what I cruise at on the highway. And so even just a mild acceleration like that, I'm sure you guys can hear that, but it's not. For being a true dual exhaust system, I like it. I think it has a deep, kind of manly gurgle. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it has a good, deep tone to it. It's not raspy like some of the other systems that I have been able to install on my truck. It's got a good, like, it makes the V6 sound very, very good. So I'm incredibly happy with the sound of this, even with the high clearance section and having it dump kind of behind the axle there. So for anyone who's wondering about like exhaust fumes, anything like that, it's still far enough away from the cab and it's aiming down, so everything is going to go down and away from the cab. And then of course, if you install this section, you won't have any issues. So my overall thoughts with this system, it went in very nicely. The install was smooth. There really wasn't any hiccups with it. The fitment was great. There were no adjustments that I had to make to it. The system itself, very nice welds. It's a very nice stainless steel kit for the Tacoma. I think it's reasonably priced compared to the other exhaust systems that I have had, and what you can do with this kit, I think it's pretty cool. The true dual exhaust is definitely my favorite part because I had to remove part of the stock exhaust that I've never removed before. And I think it definitely has a little bit louder of a sound being the true dual exhaust, but it also has a good note to it at the same time. So there's my review for this true dual exhaust AWE system for the Tacoma. Check out the links down below to get your kit for your Tacoma. And I hope you found this video helpful for this all new AWE exhaust system. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a huge thumbs up and consider smashing that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads. And I will see you all in the next video.